talk about a bounce-back season for South Carolina. After a disappointing 2023 season where they went just 5-7, the Gamecocks went 9-4 in 2024 and was one win away from making the college football playoff. They lost by 3 to LSU in very controversial fashion and lost by 2 to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. If the Gamecocks win just one of those games, they make the 12-team field. Instead, they lost both. I know the LSU game still is leaving a very sour taste in South Carolina fans' mouth. They lose both those games. They lost to Ole Miss by 24, and then they were upset in their bowl game. They were 8.5-point favorites against Illinois, lost that game by 4. Shane Beamer and Brett Bielema are really going at it in that game. But regardless, they argued they could have made the playoff last year, just missed out. They have their eyes set on the playoff this year, and they do have the roster to do it. On offense, they are led by a Heisman Trophy contender at quarterback in Lenoris Sellers. All eyes will be on him. Kind of burst onto the scene last year where the Gamecocks threw for over 2,500 yards, completed nearly 66% of his passes, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and also rushed for nearly 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. So a true dual-threat quarterback, got a great frame, great arm, should improve even more so as a passer, especially now with a new offensive coordinator in Mike Shula. This Gamecocks offense averaged over 30 points per game and over 400 yards per game last year, and I think they could very well do the same again this year. Because Sellers, of course, is leading the charge. They add Rasul Faison coming in from Utah State, who rushed for over 1,100 yards last year with the Aggies, so he's in at running back to replace Rocket Sanders. And they do return 2 of their top 3 pass catchers from last year. Nick Harbor returns after posting nearly 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mazio Bennett returns after 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. The biggest thing I'm looking out for offensively for South Carolina outside of all that is their offensive line. Up front, they gave up 41 sacks in 2024. So Sellers was constantly under pressure. Maybe he had some good rushing numbers because he was constantly running for his life. They only have 78 combined starts back up front this year, but do add in a lot of transfers that are hoping to bulk that up. And if they can build some chemistry quickly, should improve on the offensive line, should improve those sack numbers. Defensively, they do lose quite a bit too. They lose their top 5 tacklers from last year, and they had a dang good defense. Only gave up 18.1 points per game, only 317 yards per game. But despite losing some of their bigger stars, they do return a lot of talent. Dylan Stewart, back up front on the defensive line, had 6.5 sacks last year. He's paired alongside Brian Thomas, who had 4.5 sacks last year, so 11 sacks combined between those 2 players alone. They do lose their top 3 in the linebacking core, so that's kind of the biggest question mark, I think, defensively, because the secondary looks to be pretty solid. Jalen Kilgore is back at nickelback. Very, very elite. Had 48 tackles last year, 5 interceptions. One of the best defensive players, not on just this team, obviously, but I would say in the entire SEC. You've got Brandon Cease coming in from NC State to help bolster that secondary, and they do return Judge Collier and DQ Smith. So love the defensive line, even though they lose a few. Love the secondary, linebacking core, kind of the question mark. Same with the offensive line on the offensive side of the ball. But regardless, they've got a great coach. They've got a great quarterback. They've got quite a bit of talent. And unlike last year, no one's sleeping on South Carolina this year. You take a look at the schedule for the Gamecocks. Can they make the college football playoff? They actually felt they were wrongly maybe left out. They had 3 losses, but were somewhat holding out hope. They beat Clemson in that finale, thought maybe they could get in as that 12 seed. Obviously, we're very upset that they beat Clemson, but then Clemson won the ACC, so Clemson still got in, things like that. Can they get there? They have a good roster, but a very difficult schedule. They open up in Atlanta on Sunday, August 31st. So one of 2 games on that Sunday, kind of a good appetizer before that Notre Dame-Miami game. This one's going to be fun. Call it the Beamer Bowl if you want. Shane Beamer, of course, the head coach at South Carolina. His father was the legendary head coach at Virginia Tech for, almost 3 decades, if not longer. So kind of a fun game there. Virginia Tech was disappointing last year, no doubt about that. But they were banged up a lot, had a lot of injuries. Kyron Drones did not pan out the way we thought he would. This Virginia Tech team coming into week 1 should be much healthier, definitely a lot more experience, should be a lot better than what we saw on the field last year. Despite all of that, South Carolina is still going to win this game. It's going to be a great test against a Power 4 opponent, one that is going to challenge them. I don't think it's going to necessarily be a blowout, but South Carolina, to me, is the better team, the more experienced team on both sides of the ball. They're going to take care of business in Atlanta. They're going to be 1-0. And let's go ahead and make them 3-0 with a win over South Carolina State and a win at home against Vanderbilt, who they have defeated 16 games in a row. The Gamecocks have won 16 straight against Vanderbilt. That includes a 28-7 win last year in Nashville when Vanderbilt was kind of hitting their stride. The Commodores were ranked 24th in the country, and the Carolina went in there, punched them in the mouth, outgained them 452 yards to 274. It was never really even close. They will win this game in Columbia. They then go on the road to Missouri. Last year, Carolina snapped a 5-game losing streak to the Tigers, scored the game-winning touchdown with 15 seconds left. Missouri putting up one heck of a fight in a game where many thought, including myself, Carolina would win that game rather handily. Instead, only won 34-30. I'm going to give them a loss here, though, and I know a lot of people might disagree with that, and we'll revisit some of these games at the end of this video, but this Missouri defense is really, really good. They might not have the offense. They lose a lot of offensive firepower. How quickly can Bo Pribula and this quarterback change work out for the Tigers? How well does the transfers pan out? I get that. But the defense is very, very experienced. And I think they're going to give Lenore Sellers all he can handle. I know he had a great game against them last year. Torched them, as a matter of fact, in Columbia. But I really think they're going to challenge Sellers in this game, especially at home in Columbia, Missouri. I think this defensive line for Missouri, who has a lot of talent coming back, can also exploit the South Carolina offensive line. I think you look at the games that South Carolina's played to this point, I don't think they're going to face a defensive line of Missouri's caliber in their first 3 games. So this is going to be a really true test for an offensive line that's still a little shaky. I think Missouri pressures Sellers quite a bit, contains him to the pocket, doesn't allow him to run and torch him on the ground. And I like the Tigers to win a close game. They probably should have won last year. I think they find a way to sneak one out this year, especially at home. Truly a toss-up, giving the Tigers Carolina's 3-1, but they'll cruise past Kentucky to be 4-1 heading into their bye week. They won 31-6 last year against the Wildcats, and I think it could be a similar margin this year with as bad as Kentucky's going to be. So all that being said, Carolina is 4-1 heading into the bye, and what a perfect time for a bye week. Right before that LSU game. How fitting. We didn't know that was going to be the case, last year, but after the way last season's game ended, with Carolina losing by 3 to LSU in Columbia in very controversial fashion, this game now has a lot of importance for both these teams, but a lot of eyes are going to be on it because of what happened last year. Unfortunately for Carolina, as great of a revenge moment this would be for them, a great of an opportunity this is for them, I don't think they can get the job done in Death Valley. This LSU team simply is too good. Garrett Nussmeier is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. He's got some help up front on the offensive line. Got some really good help in the wide receiver corps. His offense can be better than people realize. The defense, which has kind of been an issue for LSU in recent years under Brian Kelly, looks to be really solid. 8 starters back for LSU this year, loaded at all 3 levels. Defensive line, which is concerning for the South Carolina offensive line, the linebacking core, and the secondary. Factor in Death Valley obviously is one of the most difficult places to play in the entire country. I just don't think Carolina has enough to get the job done here. I think it's relatively close again. Maybe not a 3-point margin, maybe not as controversial as last year, but LSU does get the win. And it's so frustrating for South Carolina. I know they want revenge. They led for over 55 minutes last year against the Tigers and still lost, but they do not get their revenge. They're 4-2 at the halfway point of the season. These next 3 games will define the season for Carolina. You get back-to-back home games against Oklahoma and Alabama, and then an Ole Miss team that's going to take a bit of a step back. How they fare in the next 3 games will determine whether or not Carolina is going to have a very successful season. Again, they have 2 losses at this point. They probably need to win out if they want to make the college football playoff. So whether it's viewed as a very successful season or maybe a somewhat disappointing one. To come home to Oklahoma, who they destroyed last year, 35-9 on the road. You want to know how crazy last year's game was? South Carolina's defense outscored Oklahoma. South Carolina's defense scored 12. Oklahoma's offense scored 9. That's how bad it was last year for the Sooners. The South Carolina defense put on a clinic. They held Oklahoma to 53 rushing yards. It was an insane display, especially on the road. I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout this year. I don't think the defense does as good as they did last year, especially with as improved as Oklahoma's offense is going to be. But I do think South Carolina gets the same result. I do think they get a win. This is a very difficult road game for the Sooners. Oklahoma going to be coming off that Texas game, so maybe a Texas hangover if the Sooners lose, or maybe a letdown spot if the Sooners pull off the upset over the Longhorns. I think South Carolina is catching Oklahoma at a great time, and again, back home in a hostile environment, I think this Carolina team gets the job done. They're 5-2, and then they host Alabama. Last year's game against the Crimson Tide, again, they lost by 2, was not really nearly as controversial as the LSU game, but still a revenge spot for the Gamecocks, getting to host an Alabama team that they feel they should have beaten last year. They outgained Alabama by 61 yards. 2-point conversion attempt failed. They had everything going for them, just couldn't close it out. This year, I think they do. So yes, I do think they beat Oklahoma and Alabama both at home. That's how much faith I have in Columbia. And South Carolina has proven under Shane Beamer they are capable of pulling off some massive upsets at home. You go and look, back in 2021, they were 20.5-point underdogs against Florida, and they found a way to win that game. 2022, they upset number 5 Tennessee as 22-point underdogs in Columbia. Last year, 2024, they upset number 10 Texas A&M. So they have pulled off some massive upsets over highly ranked teams or as high underdogs, very large underdogs. They've shown they can do that. I think they do it again. I don't think they're necessarily double-digit underdogs in this game. They might even be slightly favored if they beat Oklahoma and are sitting at 5-2. But this Alabama team is loaded with talent. The defense is going to be really good, but I am curious to see how their quarterback play pans out. Does Ty Simpson live up to the hype? Does he pan out? How does he fare against this great of a secondary? And how does he handle this elite of an environment? Yes, they'll have played at Georgia at this point. Yes, they'll have played at Florida State at this point. So it's not like they're coming into their first true road game or anything like that. But Columbia, South Carolina, not an easy place to play when the Gamecocks are good. And I think they show up, they show out, they pull off the upset over Alabama. They're 6-2. They're looking good. They're highly ranked. They've got playoff aspirations, but then they kind of come crashing back down to earth and they lose at Ole Miss. The Gamecocks lost to Ole Miss 27-3 last year. The Rebels' offense should still be clicking, and kind of like we talked about with Oklahoma, this feels like a classic letdown spot for the Gamecocks. Back-to-back big wins, both at home. Now you've got to go on the road to a quality Ole Miss team. Feels like the classic letdown spot where this defense kind of lays an egg against a high-octane Ole Miss offense that, yes, loses a lot, but will be just fine with Lane Kiffin at the helm. They're going to drop the game to the Rebels. They're 6-3. Coming out of the bye week, they go on the road to A&M. They're going to be 6-4. They've never won in College Station, 0-5. And yes, they destroyed A&M last year in Columbia. College Station, a completely different breed, completely different animal, and A&M's kind of figuring some things out. Last year under Mike Elko was kind of like a trial run. They still won 8 games. Now, tons of experience coming back, competent quarterback play, deep running back core, solid wide receivers, very, very good defense. The Aggies could be in contention for a playoff spot or a SEC title spot, kind of like they were last year. I really, really like this A&M squad, and I don't like Carolina's odds going on the road to this hostile of an environment. They dropped that game 6-4. They cruised past Coastal Carolina 7-4, and then the big one, the rivalry game against Clemson. Now, this game really doesn't mean as much for South Carolina. Yes, it's a rivalry game. You want to win this game. Of course, you always do. But a win doesn't get you to the playoffs, doesn't get you to the SEC championship or anything like that. A loss really doesn't hurt you that much either. So this is another opportunity for Carolina to maybe play spoiler for their in-state rival. Spoiler for Clemson, who could be in the hunt for a college football playoff spot. Last year, we saw South Carolina pull off the upset over Clemson. They've actually won the last 2 at Clemson. Obviously, it didn't do anything to hurt Clemson. All it really hurt was their eventual seeding in the playoff because the Tigers still went on to win the ACC and make the playoff. It's interesting to me, though, the fact that Carolina has won the last 2 at Clemson, but has actually not defeated Clemson in Columbia since 2013. They have not defeated Clemson at home since 2013. So I think this game is actually very close, just like the last couple have been. It's going to be very competitive because South Carolina's got a heck of a squad. But Clemson, to me, is a little bit better. I like Cade Klubnik more than I like the Norris Sellers. They got a lot of elite wide receivers coming back for him. That defense will be one of the best in the nation. I think from top to bottom, including coaching, Clemson has the edge here. And I think they eke out a win over South Carolina. Revenge for the loss they took in Death Valley last year. A lot to play for the Tigers at this point because I do think they're going to be in the mix of the playoff by the end of the season. I think they get their revenge where they have not really struggled in Columbia. Again, it's been over 10 years since they've lost there. They get a win. And South Carolina finishes the year at 7-5. And I know a lot of people will view that as a massive, massive disappointment. I get that. And maybe you disagree with some of the wins and losses here. Maybe you give them a win at Missouri. Maybe you give them a win at Ole Miss. I think the ceiling for South Carolina this year is what they had last year, which was 9-3. I don't think they're going to exceed 9 wins. I just don't think so. I think the schedule is too tough. And I think there's too many questions on both sides of the ball. The offensive line, the linebacking core still concern me quite a bit. So give them the win at Missouri. Give them a win at Ole Miss if you want 9-3. Maybe sub them out. Oh, they're not going to beat Alabama, but they're going to beat Missouri. I think the 7-5 to 9-3 range is what you should expect for South Carolina this year. So another winning season, another bowl game, but in the eyes of many, a disappointment, especially considering what they did last year and who they bring back. But again, the schedule just a little bit too tough. The Gamecocks, again, a successful season in my eyes, just considering the winning season, considering what they're going up against, but I know many will not view it that way. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the country. Go check it out. Sign up for those today. Check out our weekly newsletters as well. Tons of exclusive content coming out in those every single week that you do not want to miss. The link for that, again, down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.